Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So I think we are meeting after a bit of a break, maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks, because we had, I think, different things going on. Maharaj's program, and then I think Parikshit's stuff. So I'll do a quick recap. We were at the point of starting the 6th chapter. And then I had done a little bit of discussion in terms of how does Krishna lead us to this point. The 6th chapter is called Dhyana Yoga. So as we know, Krishna, he started off by giving Arjun Karma Yoga. And through the process of Karma Yoga, he teaches Arjun and he teaches us the process of how to control our senses. So essential to Karma Yoga is working in a way that is controlled, that we either detach ourselves from the object of our activities, or we detach ourselves from the activity itself. So the whole purpose of Karma Yoga is to bring us to the point where we are able to control our senses. And following that, Krishna speaks a little bit about Jnana in the 4th chapter. He talks about himself, very, very basic introduction to Krishna himself, and speaks about the importance of working in knowledge. So he's talking about working in knowledge of the fact that you are not the body but the soul. And the practical manifestation of working in knowledge is Nishkam Karma. That when one works with the understanding that they are not the body, then everything that is linked to the body becomes irrelevant. So sometimes we work for when we are doing Sakam Karma, we are doing it to either satisfy one of our 5 senses or maybe a subtle desires. So sometimes we work so that we can eat good food, or we can get some fame, or we can get comfort. So it's for some desire, to fulfill some desire we are doing. But as we start to work in knowledge, we basically begin to transition to the state of Nishkam Karma, where our activities are not really done so much for the purpose of personal enjoyment. And the symptom of Nishkam Karma at this stage is what is known as Karma Phal Tyag, that we basically detach ourselves from the fruits of the activity. So what would be one common example of Nishkam Karma in this mood? More from like a practical, what kind of activities do people who are in this frame of mind typically do? You're speaking too much like a devotee. So
Volunteer work.
volunteer work, charity is a strong symptom, because when you work, you get the first thing is that this is all for me. This is the money that I have got for me. This is the fame that I have got for me. And when comes Phal Tyag is, then you develop some detachment from the fruits of the activity. That fine, I worked hard and I got all this money, but let me give away a part of this money to charitable causes, maybe to sick people, maybe to people who are more in need. So this is the first stage of Karma Yoga, that one gets detached from the fruits of the activity. As one progresses along this path, then one develops more detachment, not only from the fruits of the activity, but from the activity itself. So a person may be giving in charity, but he may still have this notion that I am the person who's giving in charity. That I, because of my ability, have been able to amass so much of wealth, and out of that I am giving in charity. So there is still piety over there, but there is still that aham, that ego, that because of all these activities that I did, I have been able to help others. And when one gets a little bit more realized in this stage, then one gives up the detachment to the activity itself. That I am not the doer of the activity. So herein then Krishna introduces us to one of the most intriguing aspects of Bhagavad Gita and spirituality per se, where he talks to Arjun that beginning from the 3rd chapter, he begins to impress upon Arjun that you are not the doer. And at different points, Krishna says different things to basically walk Arjun through this path of increased realization. So in the 3rd chapter, he says Prakriti Kriyamanani Gunakarmani Sarvasha Ahankar Vimudatma Karta Ahamiti Manyate. That everything has been done by Prakriti, by the modes of material nature. Prakriti Kriyamanani. And why does the person think that I am the doer? Arjun might say that, but everybody is saying that I am the doer. And then Krishna says, Ahankar Vimudatma Karta Ahamiti Manyate. Because of Ahankar. So Ahankar, the meaning of Ahankar, Aham means me, and Kar means I am the doer. Ahankar means that I am the doer of everything. Everything that is happening around me is because of me only. So Ahankar Vimudatma. So Mudha means one who is a fool. Vimudha means one who is big fool. It's like it exaggerates the adjective. So Ahankar Vimudatma Karta Aham, that I am the doer. In the 5th chapter, Krishna, because in the 4th chapter Krishna has now talked about himself, so in the 5th chapter Krishna then starts talking to Arjun about the importance of. So one may consider oneself not as the doer from two aspects, from two conceptions. One may think that I am not the doer because everything is being done by the modes of material nature, or one might say that I am not the doer because I am surrendered to Krishna. Krishna is acting through me. That's the mood of a devotee. That everything that I am doing is because Krishna is empowering me to do it. So by the 5th chapter, Krishna is preparing Arjun for the next section of the Bhagavad Gita, which is Bhakti Yoga. And of course, when Krishna talks about Bhakti, he has to talk about Bhagwan. So the section of Bhakti Yoga starts from the 7th chapter. So now from the 5th chapter onwards, Krishna has begun to transition Arjun gradually to the notion of the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he introduces Krishna to Arjun to, in the 5th chapter, to Super Soul. So he talks about how can one develop equanimity of vision. So the word Vidya Vini Sampane Brahmane Gavihastani Shunicheva Swapake Cha Pandita Sam Darshana. So introduces Arjun to the concept of very good, thank you. He introduces Arjun to the concept of Samdrishti. That how can one develop Samdrishti? One can develop Samdrishti two ways. One is that one sees everybody as a soul. So when one sees everybody as a soul, the soul is spiritual in nature, and then one develops Samdrishti. But it is said that that drishti to some extent is still biased, because the body that the soul takes is because of the desires of the soul. So when a soul is in the body of a dog, even though you can see that it is the same soul, but you also see that the reason it has got the body of a dog is because of the activities and the desires of this soul. So there is some inflection over there. A higher form of Samdrishti, which Krishna speaks in the 5th chapter, is when you see the Paramatma in everybody. Along with the Atma, you see the Paramatma. So when you not only see the spiritual existence of everybody, but also see that each one of them has a unique and distinct relationship with Krishna. So in this way, Arjuna is introduced to the notion of Paramatma, which also is the segue into the 6th chapter, which is Dhyana Yoga. So Dhyana Yoga is also known as Astanga Yoga, and Krishna speaks here for a few reasons. Srila Prabhupada mentions that even though Astanga Yoga is impossible to execute in the present age of Kali, so one might wonder that why did Krishna use valuable time when he was talking to Arjun? Battle was imminent and time was at a premium. Why did Krishna use, he speaks I think 54 verses. Why does he speak about Dhyana Yoga? And then Prabhupada explains that firstly it's a bona fide process. So when Krishna is speaking about different ways to attain the Supreme, Dhyana Yoga is a bona fide process. It just so happens that it is difficult to practice in the current day and age. Secondly, he also speaks to illustrate the difficulty in following it. And thirdly, he speaks about it to have Arjuna understand that because Arjuna is initially in the 1st chapter, his notion was that I will give up my battle and my kingly responsibilities, and then I will go to the jungle and become a yogi over there. So Arjuna was equating yoga to inactivity. That I'll just hang around there and sit under trees. A lot of people have this conception that I'll sit under trees, I'll just close my eyes and do something. And then Krishna wants to illustrate that actually yoga, it involves a lot more activities than even karma and then even jnana. So he wants to dispel that notion from Arjuna's mind. So before we start the verses, I wanted to give a little bit of, Prabhupada gives it in the purports, so I just want to collect it and give a little bit of overview on what exactly is Astanga Yoga. So yoga, of course, in the current day and age, it goes with many different names. There are so many yoga studios and so many books on yoga. The authoritative description of yoga is given in Patanjali Sutras. So they are also known as Yoga Sutras, and they are described by sage Patanjali. So he divides the process of yoga into 8 steps. That is why it is often known as Ashtanga yoga. So Asht means 8 and Ang means limbs. So he divides the process of yoga into 8 stages, and we'll briefly go over each of the 8 stages. So the first stage is known as Yam. So Yam means restrictions. So when even before we start engaging in the process of yoga, then it is important for the practitioner to understand that what are the restrictions that one must abide by before they become qualified to go to the subsequent stages. So some of the restriction at a general level, it's fairly exhaustive, but at a general level the restriction is one that leads one away from grossly sinful activities. That one should follow celibacy, one should eat only as much that is needed, one should only sleep as much that is needed, one should give up greed, one should give up lust. So that is why karma and jnana are considered to be prerequisites of Ashtanga yoga, because through karma one is able to control one's senses, and through jnana one is able to control one's desires. So through the practice of karma and jnana, when one is able to control one's senses and one's desires, then one is ready to follow the Ashtanga yoga. Because if you think of it from a practical perspective, that somebody who is not able to control this starts engaging in the practice of yoga, very difficult for them to meditate, because the mind will always be following the desires in the heart, and very difficult to control the senses also. If one tries to practice meditation and the senses is that tomorrow I will have puri aloo, and day after tomorrow I will go and I will go to the cold water steam and have a nice bath over there, and then after that I will go to the village mela, and then I will come back and do yoga. So it will be it's very distracting for the body and the mind. So that is why Krishna has also put this after he has spoken about karma and to some extent jnana. So the first stage of yam is all the prohibitions that one must follow before they become qualified to go to the subsequent stage. The next stage is called niyam. So it goes along with yam. The yam is prohibitions and the niyam is injunctions. That what should one do? That what kind of food should one eat? What kind of a lifestyle should one lead? So between yam and niyam, the two of them are together to elevate one to the stage of material detachment. That one is at a stage where they do not allow themselves to be very much engrossed in the material world. The third stage of Ashtanga yoga is known as asana. So asana literally means sitting motionlessly. So asana is also known as hatha yoga, and again, so these are all external material stages. The purpose of asana is to help one prepare the body to be suitable for meditation later on. So if one is not able to develop the body in a way that one can sit for extended periods of time. In the Satyug there were yogis who would actually sit for hundreds and thousands of years, and that's because they had practiced this process of asana. And asana is essentially the ability to develop the muscles of the body, to develop the joints and the bones of the body, to make the body in a way that it can be it can be almost immune to external material considerations. The next stage is pranayam. So pranayam is so yam is again control, and pran is pran. So it is controlling the pran, and pran is one of the more esoteric aspects of our existence. So as we know that when the soul comes down to the material world, the soul is spiritual by nature. So there is nothing that it knows how to interact with the material world. It's like they are completely different entities, right? So anybody here has a chemistry background other than my wife? Does anybody know what emulsifiers are? What are emulsifiers?
Basically, emulsification. I mean, I know it through cooking.
Okay.
Basically, emulsification is a process which mixes oil and water.
Oil and water, right? So emulsifiers, they are a very unique kind of chemical that the reason. So oil and water by nature don't mix. You put oil and you put water, you shake it as much you can, it'll never mix. When you put emulsifiers, then they mix, because the emulsifiers, to oil it looks like oil, and to water it looks like water. So water binds with it thinking is water, and oil binds with it thinking it's oil, and that's how they mix. So that's the role of the subtle body. That to the material world it looks gross, and to the spiritual world it looks spiritual. So it is made of mind, intelligence, and false ego. The false ego is the part of it that deals with the spiritual world. So the spirit thinks that I can understand this, and the mind is the part that deals with the gross. As we know, the mind controls the senses. So through the mind, the senses and the material world is concerned. So as soon as the spirit soul enters into the material world from the spiritual world, it gets the subtle body, and the subtle body remains with it for the duration that the soul is in the material body. The same subtle body stays, even though the soul may get different gross bodies. The same subtle bodies will stay for the millions of births that the soul might take. When the subtle body enters into a gross body, then it is bound to the gross body by pran. So pran is known as life airs. There are 9 kinds of life airs. I forget the name. Prabhupada has talked about them. So the pran is what binds the subtle body to the gross body, and the subtle body is what encapsulates the spirit soul. So that is why, at least in Vedic tradition or in original Sanskrit, many of the relationships that acknowledge this relationship between the soul and the body, they address through pran. Like like a wife might say to the husband that you are my prannath, which basically is saying that you don't own my soul because my soul belongs to Krishna. You don't own my body because I own my body, but you own this particular relationship between the soul and the body, which is pran. So it's kind of like supposing I have a house, right, and I give it out for rent. So a tenant comes and moves into the house. So while the tenant lives in the house belongs to the tenant, right? So we can't just go in and say, no, this is my house, and start cooking in the kitchen, or just go in the house and do whatever happens. The house belongs to the tenant, but we own the lease of the house. We own the relationship between the house and the tenant. That is pran. That is the relationship between the soul and the body. So like in Sanskrit, when the term like prannath is used, it basically is acknowledging the fact that the soul can never belong to anybody else, other than Krishna. The body is occupied by the soul, so the it's under the control of the soul. But as long as this relationship is there, that belongs to you. This is like maybe a wife telling a husband. That is why they also, I see your hand. So that is why they also when they talk about death, they talk about they have like different terms in Sanskrit for death, like pran tyag diya, pran pakheru ho gaye, because they acknowledge in the fact that actually what happens at the time of death is that this bond that is created by pran is dissolved, and the gross body can never die because it was never alive. So what is not alive cannot die. The spirit soul can never die because it is immortal. So what happens at the time of death? The relationship between the spirit soul and the gross body is dissolved. And what is the relationship? That is pran. And what is pranayam? Pranayam is the process of controlling pran. So the purpose of pranayam is to extend one's life. I see your hand, Prabhu. So the purpose of pranayam is to extend one's life. So because this is what is holding one's association, the spiritual association with the body, and the process of yoga itself takes very, very long time. Even when it was practiced in Satyug, where people lived for hundreds and thousands of years, even they needed to extend their life. So that is why, as a preparation to so these are all preparatory stages. So as a preparation to the practice of yoga, they practice pranayam in order to extend their body. And it extends it in different way. It extends it in a way, and these are discussed later on, that one can strengthen pran and one can weaken pran. So one of the siddhis that the yogis get is that they can leave the body anytime they want. So they have control on pran. Also, they will not die unless they want to die. They can strengthen pran. They can also make it elastic. So they can have the subtle body leave the gross body. So like in our case, our subtle body is completely within the gross body. But yogis, they can extend the pran through which the subtle body can leave the gross body and travel in the subtle environment. So is your question answered, or do you still have it?
A little bit confusion.
Okay.
So soul has a connection only with ahankar, and ahankar is having that connection with mind.
More with intelligence.
More with intelligence.
So it goes from gross to subtle. Like mind is more gross, and intelligence is subtle, and ahankar is the subtlest form, and that connects to the soul.
So, because with the emulsifier analogy I am trying to understand, so soul has no idea about the mind. It only identifies itself with the ahankar.
More or less. Yeah.
Mind is the one which joins the intelligence and the false ego to the senses cross body.
Yes.
So
Maybe we can take it offline. You seem very agitated, so we can talk about it later. Any other questions, comments?
Is the pran in any way related to breath?
Prana is related to breath. In a way, because it gets more technical than I want to. I don't have that knowledge also, but ultimately, pran is life airs. So there are different kinds of. What's going on? Can you not do this? Just leave. So prana itself is several kinds of life airs, and Prabhupada writes that the life airs, the soul with the subtle body is floating on these life airs, and the life airs at one end connect to the soul, and at the other end they connect to the gross body, right? So this whole process of kundali, chakra and all that, this is all basically manifestation of strengthening the prana. And ultimately what the yogis through pranayama do, because it is said that every breath that we take, it's one breath closer to our death. So ultimately what the yogis do is that they can control the breath to a point where they'll breathe once in a year or once in 10 years. So that's how they're able to live. We may breathe 20,000 times there, and they may breathe one time only. So that's how they're able to extend their life to as long as they want. But again, Prabhupada, he gives some explanation, but he does mention that it's and Krishna also mentioned that to get a greater understanding of this, the Yoga Sutras talk about it in greater details. Anything else? Any other question? Anirudh?
Dhyana and bhakti, you are saying.
What?
Dhyana and bhakti.
Dhyana and bhakti. Okay, I'll cover about it. Okay, so we talked about the initial stages of yoga, which is yam, niyam, asana and pranayama. So these are all completely material stages. They have nothing to do with yoga per se. They are preparatory stages. They are known as yoga rurukshu. So a person at this stage is considered to be a neophyte, because all they are doing is that they are preparing for yoga. The next stage, which is the fifth stage, which is a transitionary stage, and that is known as pratyahara. So pratyahara is the stage where one uses everything that they have acquired in the lower stages to start turning their attention from material to spiritual. So pratyahara literally means that, so ahar is food. So pratyahara is that you don't get food from outside now. This is not just like food that you eat, but sustenance, that you're actually nourishing from within. So your attention is not now outside, but it is inside. Following pratyahara, we have the stages, and these final three stages are the actual stages, are actual performance of yoga, and they are dharana, dhyan and samadhi. So dharana is that now that you are at a position to internally focus, you try. Dharana means to acquire something. So you try and acquire something. Basically, put it on an object. So the yogis, they could meditate for many different reasons, and dharana is connecting it to that reason for which they are meditating. So a yogi may be meditating on the impersonal Brahman. So that's their dharana. Then they think about the all pervasiveness of God, nature, how everything is intimately connected in its universality. Everything is one and the same. So the dharana is on the Brahman. Or the yogis may meditate on the Paramatma, or the yogis may meditate on Krishna. So the dharana is what is the object. So it's not that Astanga yoga is not an ang of bhakti yoga. It is one of the ways to execute bhakti yoga. And so, does anybody have an example where somebody used Astanga yoga for bhakti? Dhruv Maharaj. He is an example, right? Now, he was during the Satyug time, And that time the recommended way of making spiritual advancements was through yoga. But while he was performing these austerities, what was he meditating on? He was meditating on Lord Vishnu. Right? So when the dharana is on the Lord, then the successive stages of meditation go Nam, Roop, Gun, Leela. So initially, and we in a way we are like small yogis, because we do our chanting, and when we are chanting, what are we doing? What is our dharana? The Nam, right? We are meditating on the name. And as that dharana becomes stronger, it becomes Dhyana. So then Nam becomes, from Nam, it becomes Roop. So through the name of Krishna, we then get access to the form of Krishna. And from the form of Krishna, we get access to the qualities of Krishna. And from the qualities of Krishna, we get access to Krishna Leela. So we get access to the pastimes of Krishna. So in Chaitanya pastimes, we see that very advanced Vaishnavas like Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, when they would chant with so much of concentration that they would immediately get participation in Krishna Leela. And this was not voyeuristic, it was not imagination. They would actually be present, witnessing the Krishna Leela in their full consciousness. So this is the mood of a yogi who is a devotee. But different people follow yoga for different reasons. So it is said that people in the mode of ignorance, why do they do yoga? To basically escape from the responsibilities. So somebody says, this material world is a difficult place to live in. I have a boss who scolds me every day, and I have a car payment to make, and I have a wife who nags me every day, and I have kids who are too much of trouble. So I'll become a yogi. So then they go under the tree and they sit, and while they're sitting, they're thinking about their wife and their children. But the real reason they're sitting there is because they want to escape from their responsibilities. But because the mind is so agitated, their heart is so full of desires, then ultimately what happens is that they start taking different kinds of intoxicants to basically further that mood of artificial detachment there. So that's yoga in the mode of ignorance. There's yoga in the mode of passion. When people do yoga, not for the purpose of yoga, but for the side effects of yoga. So there will be people who will do asanas, not really to practice the subsequent stages of yogas, but just to get a healthy body. Or there are people who do pranayam, again not for subsequent stages, but just to get peace of mind or to increase their longevity. So this is yoga in the mode of passion. Yoga in the mode of goodness is when people do yoga, go to the more higher stages of yoga, but they're still looking for material benefits. So when one goes to the higher stage of yoga, what does one get? At the stage of dharana and dhyan, what does one get? One gets siddhis. So there are different kind of siddhis that automatically come as a side effect of yoga. Just like from asana one becomes healthy as a side effect, through the later stages of yogas one gets siddhis. And there are different kind of siddhis that appear at different stages of the yoga, called ashta siddhis, 8 siddhis. So there is, not referring to all of them, there is anima, which is the siddhi of becoming smaller than the smallest. There is mahima, which is becoming larger than the largest. There is garima, which is becoming heaviest, and anima, mahima, garima, lagima. Lagima is then becoming light. These are 4 siddhis. Then there is prapti. Prapti is the ability to get whatever you want. So Prabhupada describes his encounter with a yogi in Lucknow. I think he was a famous yogi, and Prabhupada along with somebody went there for just to get darshan, and the yogi asked somebody sitting that what is your favorite fruit, and then he mentioned some fruit that at that time it's a fruit from Afghanistan that grows over there only. And Prabhupada said the yogi closed his eyes, he extended his hand, and then he opened his hand and the fruit was there in the hand. And Prabhupada could see the moisture on the dew, the morning dew that it accumulates. He could see the dew. It was so fresh, plucked out of the tree. And Prabhupada said for a while he was amazed. And then later on he said that what's the big deal about it? It seems to be amazing that you get a fruit from 1,000 miles away, but ultimately anybody can get that fruit from there. But this is the siddhi of prapti. The next siddhi is known as prakamya. So prakamya is that to be able to fulfill all your kamya, all your desires. So we see in the Bhagavatam there are Saurabh Rishi, like he was a great yogi, and he used to perform his yoga underwater, and then he would see the fishes mating over there, and because of that his mind got agitated, and then he came with such a strong desire to enjoy with the opposite sex that he actually divided himself into 10 himselves. He cloned himself into 10 himselves and married 10 different women so that he could have simultaneously more enjoyment. So this is prakamya. Then the next is known as ishitva. So isha means being God. Ishitva is the ability to lord over everything, material and people. And the highest siddhi is known as I may mispronounce it. It is Vashitva. And Vashitva, so it's Vashitva is Vash means controlling. Vashitva is the ability to control everybody. So it's said that bending the will of somebody else. Women are naturally born with that siddhi. So bending the will of somebody else to yours is the most difficult siddhi. And and we see that there are yogis who are able to say, you do this, and people just follow. So, and in different, we see very, very, like Vishwamitra, right? He's a very, very powerful yogi. And at one point he had a quarrel with Indra because of Trishanku. There was a person who came to him saying that you send me to the heavenly bodies in my own body. Even though he was a pious king, but he got a little messed up. And he said that I've been performing so many, all the activities that I performed that qualify my ascension to the heavenly planets, I did with my body. So why should I leave my body? I should go to the heavenly kingdom with my own body. And he served Vishwamitra very nicely. So Vishwamitra said, Tathastu, so be it. And then by his yogic power, he elevated him to Swargalok. And then Indra said that nobody here can come, even though you're qualified to enter the heavenly kingdom, but not in your body. The way the rule of the nature is, you give up your body and then you get another body when you come here. So he pushed him down. And Vishwamitra, of course, is not a person to be messed with. So he said that whether you like it or not, because I have given him my word, you have to take admittance in the heavenly kingdom. And then Indra said no. So then Vishwamitra said, fine, I will make another heaven. So then he started creating a parallel universe. He started creating different planetary systems. He started creating different animals, different plants, all because of his siddhis. And then at one point it became so difficult that Brahma himself came and said that you stop. And let Trishanku, so he had created another planet for Trishanku. And he said that I give that planet to Trishanku. Let him stay over there. Everything that you have created, I will preserve it. But please stop over here. Don't go any further. And then Vishwamitra, of course, stopped. So that's why they said that there are many species that look a little weird. They are created by Vishwamitra. Like when he wanted to create a parallel species to a cow, he created a buffalo. And when he wanted to create a horse, he created a camel. So there are some species that look like some others, but a little different. And sometimes devotees tease each other that you are created by Vishwamitra. So like you are a little weird of the. So, but this is the power of yoga. But ultimately, it's all material power, right? Whether you get something, whether you create something, whether you control somebody's mind or control whatever it is, these are all material. That's why they're there. So the higher stage of yoga, even though it's the mode of goodness, the ultimate mood of a person who is performing yoga is Shuddha Sattva, purified goodness, where one uses everything to serve Krishna. So if the yogi is able to develop this power to leave the body at their own when they want to, then a yogi who is following the path to Krishna will control their minds at the time of their death, so that they have only one thought in their mind, which is Krishna. So Krishna later on says, Yam Yam Vapi Smaran Bhavam, that whoever, there's another verse, Antakale Chamam Eva, Smaran Mukta Kalevaram, Ya Prayati Samad Bhavam. The Antakale Chamam Eva, that at the time of death, that one who thinks of me will come to me. So that's what the yogis do. That for an ordinary person, there is no way to control your mind at the time of death. The mind becomes very agitated, it is fearful, it is a traumatic experience for the soul also, where it has been living in this body for some time. Now it's being pulled out of that body, the prans are getting dissolved. So it's very traumatic for the soul also, very difficult to control the mind. Sometimes people would tell Prabhupada that we'll have a good time, and at the time of death we'll think of Krishna. And Prabhupada said the only way you can think of Krishna at the time of death is if you practice thinking of Krishna while you're living. As you practice during your life, only, so our reflexes kick in. That we basically go to where our mind naturally takes shelter of. So we see in the Ajmail pastime that when he was dying, he was very much attached to his son, and his mind went over there to, where is my son, where are you? That's where his mind took shelter. So wherever our mind naturally seeks shelter, it will rush to that shelter only. So as we live our life in Krishna consciousness, as our natural state of being is more and more taking shelter of Krishna, that I remember this is many years ago, we were driving back from Gita Nagari and we had an accident on the way. So the car was going and stuff happened. It was my fault, but the car went on the side, and Indulekha was on my side, and my everything in me was trying to control the car, and Indulekha was like Krishna, 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 and I was thinking that if he had died at the time, Indulekha would have gone back to Krishna Loka, I would have gone back to Car Loka. I would have been born as a car somewhere, because that was my meditation at the time, that the steering wheel, brake, how is this car going? But that's what it is, that when death comes, it comes Even though we may think that we'll die, but we're never ready for death. When death comes, it comes suddenly, and the mind will naturally take shelter of where it always has been taken shelter. So that's one of the reasons why yogis, they're able to control their minds through dharan and dhyan and samadhi. And of course it depends on the propensity also. Like in Mahabharata we see that Dhritarashtra, towards the end of his life, he became a yogi. When Vidur came and told him that he came and spoke very harsh words to Dhritarashtra, that you're living in Bhima's house, who has killed 100 of your sons, and you're living in Yudhishthira's house like a dog, and better for you to leave. And Yudhishthira and Dhritarashtra, he was a great personality at one. So he went and performs very severe austerities. He performed yoga, but because he was so naturally envious of Krishna, his mind could never go to Krishna. So his mind went to the impersonal Brahman, and that's where he went. So as we live our life, so do we die. Death is just a continuation of how we live our lives. So, so this is a brief overview of the process of yoga. Very brief, very condensed. Like I said, the knowledge in this is like a vast ocean. But thanks to Prabhupada, he has distilled it and given us the highlights of it. So I'll pause here and see if you have any questions or comments.
How about to give a good example of a yogi who has lived a long life? Vishampitama, when the Pandavas and Kauravas were fighting, and he lived for a long time on the arrows, he lived something like 300 years. That's what they say. I think that was, like you explained, he breathed less,
Right. And Bhishmatama also, because he had gotten the boon from his father, Shantanu. Shantanu had given Bhishma the boon that of Ichha Mrityu, that you'll only die when you will desire to die. So that's why he was holding his life, because he wanted to have audience of Krishna before he dies. But he is also considered to be a great yogi. He lived a very long life, and he was a complete. He was a Naishtik Brahmachari. He was a celibate. He controlled his senses. He's considered to be a great yogi. Pariksha. Bindu?
Prabhu, for a practicing devotee, how does one bridge the bhakti and the yoga? Because from my perspective, the way I see it, they are like almost two parallel lines.
They are parallel lines if you make the destination separate. Otherwise they could be the same. Like I know of devotees who do pranayam before chanting, and the reason they do it is because it clears the mind. Right? So they don't really do it because they want to extend their prana or whatever it is, but they feel that it helps them in the chanting. I know of devotees who do asanas, hatha yoga, because it keeps the body healthy to do more devotional service. So, and that is why I said that nothing is really separate from bhakti. What makes it separate is a consciousness, that why are we doing it. There's so many people, there are so many yoga studios, right? And there's so many people that are doing hatha yoga, which Prabhupada would say is, not really yoga, because the first two stages are not followed. The yam and the niyam stages are not followed. But there is a semblance of hatha yoga, but the only purpose that they want to do it is because they want some good health. And maybe if somebody is a little bit more evolved, they'll do it because of peace, right? But it's just for themselves, not for anything else. But if we do it, or if devotees do it, that may my body be healthy so that I can serve Krishna and other devotees. May my mind be clear so that I can have more focus on the chanting of the holy name. May my intelligence get purified so that I can read the scriptures properly. And then it becomes connected to bhakti per se. Yeah? Yes? Okay.
So, Prabhu, a follow-up question. So, is it can that connection come at a later stage, or it's one or the other?
It's no, it's definitely not one or the other. It's all the desire of the person, that a person may follow the process of Astanga Yoga and become detached from the material world, and then say that, okay, I have nothing to do with this material world, what do I do now? And then they seek shelter in the lotus feet of Krishna. Right. So that is why Krishna puts this process here, that even if one is not taken to bhakti, if one takes to Astanga Yoga, one is closer to the stage of bhakti. Because even if you don't have spiritual attachment, one thing that Astanga Yoga will, if it is properly practiced, will give you material detachment. Right? So when you're materially detached, then at least you don't have all the encumbrance of lust, anger, greed, envy, so many desires. You're unencumbered by all those. So you're at least one step closer. Now after that, it's up to you what do you do with the fact that you're free from it. You can go to Krishna, you can go to Super Soul, you can go to Brahman, you can go to Siddhis and say, this is what I want. And Prabhupada mentions that as one progresses through the stages of bhakti, Krishna becomes more and more benevolent towards the person. Krishna himself will try and make arrangements for the person to come to him. So Krishna also plays a role there. Yeah? Prabhu?
Prabhuji already answered my question.
I did? Okay. Anything else?
I have one question. You
Yes,
gave
Prabhu.
an example that you own wife's soul and body, pran, but
My wife's?
yeah, but I think the wife owns husbands too more.
Well, I don't want to get into a feminist debate. I'm
I'm
just
just kidding, yeah.
saying that the scriptures,
Just want to make it laughter.
there is certain terminology in the scriptures. I brought the point not so much to say that husband owns or wife owns, but the fact that a lot of the terms that are used in the scriptures, they have a lot of deep realization within them. That why does it say pranamath? Right, because there is an implicit acknowledgement over here, right? That the soul doesn't belong to you,
Yes.
right? So what do I have that I can offer to you? That's that's my pran. Of course, the husband offers the soul themselves to the right.
Super Soul and Krishna are same or different?
Super soul, and so we had a fair bit of discussion on that. That Paramatma is an expansion of Krishna. We talked about the Vishnu expansion, how Krishna expands to Garbhodaksha Vishnu, Mahavishnu, Garbhodaksha Vishnu, Shriyodaksha Vishnu, and Shriyodaksha Vishnu is so every aspect of material existence is nourished by a super soul, by a Paramatma, because by nature the material world, there are so many, like, if you look at the material world, it is very, very subject to rules and regulations. There's laws of gravitation, laws of electricity, laws of whatever it is. So how can something that is not sentient submit itself to so much rules and regulations? Like, we can do it because we can consciously say that we are subjecting ourselves. I will get up early, right? It's a conscious. But matter, if it does not have that consciousness, how can it submit itself to so many rules and regulations? It does so because of the presence of the super soul. So behind the whole material creation, Karnodaksha Vishnu is the super soul. Behind each universe, Garbhodaksha Vishnu is the super soul. And behind each one of us, Shriyodaksha Vishnu is the super soul. So they are all essentially Vishnu expansions of Lord Krishna. Yeah? Okay. Anything else? Yes?
Minor, with yoga practice,
Yeah.
Dhyana yoga practice, like he gradually elevates himself, so it's kind of ascending. But when he reaches to the stage where he can achieve the impersonal liberation or localized Paramatma liberation, there Krishna's mercy should be there, right, Prabhu?
That's a good point. So, in
Prabhu, can you repeat the question, please?
the question is that if a yogi happens to reach to the point where they achieve Krishna or Paramatma or even impersonal Brahma is a little different, but especially if they are reaching the stage of samadhi into Krishna or into Paramatma, the mercy of Krishna has to be there, and that's a good point. That's why I was responding to Somu's point that Krishna's mercy comes to his devotees, right? So when a person is embarking on this journey, on their own they can do a lot of the initial stages. They can do asana, yam, niyam, pranayam. But when they reach the stage of Dhyana or Dharana or Samadhi, that's when, if they have the mercy of a devotee, then they will direct it to Krishna, right? So somebody gives them this, the mercy flows as blessings, it can flow as realizations, it can flow as knowledge. But through this mercy, when the yogi gets inspired, like Dhruva Maharaj, he got the mercy of Narad Muni. Right? So Narad Muni said that this is how you should do it. Now in his case, he had a super condensed program that he did the whole thing in 6 months. Because he was a powerful soul to begin with, but he definitely needed that mercy to embark on that. Yeah?
I look at it this way, we all have Atma, Mahatma, Paramatma, so it's ascending, and when you become Paramatma, then means you are meeting Krishna.
So you never become Paramatma.
Never become, but you are meeting him, you're getting close to him.
Right, so that's why we say consciousness, you become aware. So Krishna is always Krishna, right? You will never become Krishna. Even though we spend all our lives in the material world, we spend them trying to be Krishna, but it's not going to happen. Jiva will always be Jiva, and Krishna will always be Krishna. So the perfection of our life is to become aware of this relationship. Like Krishna is God and we are Jiva, right? So that's why we say we become conscious of the awareness. Okay. So I wasn't able to start the chapter this time also. My apologies. I have only a few minutes. I don't want to start the chapter. Leave in. I guess it's a long chapter. I don't know if I can do it in one sitting. So we have a few minutes. Either we can have a little bit more discussion, or we can have the sing the prayers.
Actually, we can go 5 minutes over to that. We're just going to make the offering.
Going to make the offering. Okay. Yeah. So, is there any question? Any discussions?
See, in yoga, is there any way yoga can help build determination?
Yoga can help build determination. It is, I guess, a cyclical process. Yoga requires a lot of determination. That's why it is said that the prerequisites for yoga is control of senses and control of desires, right? So you can imagine that controlling one's senses requires a tremendous amount of determination. Controlling one's desires, even more determination. So these are the prerequisites to yoga. But as one engages sincerely in the process of yoga, all these qualities are further nourished, especially in the later stages of yoga, dharana, dhyan, samadhi, where the focus is more and more on detaching materially and attaching spiritually, right? So Prabhupada says that as iron enters into fire, then initially there is iron in the fire, then there is a hot iron in the fire, and then the iron becomes indistinguishable from the fire. So as the soul comes more and more in contact with Krishna, then the spiritual qualities of the soul become stronger, or the manifest spiritual quality. The soul is always spiritual. The manifest spiritual qualities become more and more prominent. So all these qualities that Krishna has himself, that he is the most determined of all, he is the most chivalrous of all, he is the most attractive of all these qualities begin to manifest just because of the proximity to Krishna. Does that help? Yeah. Anything else? Any other points? Buddhadev? Buddhadev looks like a yogi.
In this context of the discussion, that Krishna mentioned many times in Bhagavad Gita that if you remember him at the end of the life, he will reach me. He will get my quality. So if I just simply concentrate on ISKCON communities, there are many documented examples that devotees, when they knew that they are almost ending their life, they prepare themselves. And they just chant the name and then they live the life. Right? So that is one end of the story. The other end of the story is that there are many exalted devotees within the ISKCONs. They end their life all of a sudden, by accident. So how do you reconcile these two ends in this context that they will reach the Krishna?
Good question. So I guess addressing the first aspect is straightforward, that is a manifestation of Krishna's mercy, that Krishna somehow helps make the arrangements in devotees' life that they are able to be surrounded by Krishna's name, when he leaves. I think Radhanath Maharaj was once sharing this example of his disciple, either he was newly initiated or he was not yet initiated.
He was in the Bombay hospital.
With the Bombay hospital, right? I think he was newly initiated at the time.
He was just 28, 29 years old.
He was a very young man.
He was very jubilant, he was very happy at the days, right? And also another example is Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj.
And so these are examples of Krishna's mercy, right? Especially in this case that he was fairly young. He got, I think he had cancer or something like that. He had a very aggressive form of cancer. His wife was pregnant, and at the time when he was dying, it so happened that Radhanath Maharaj came. He was by his bedside. Kirtan was going on. All the devotees were surrounding him, and in that way his death was glorious. In cases where devotees die all of a sudden, at different points Prabhupada said different things. Prabhupada said that you should always look upon your relationship with Krishna as a relationship with a very benevolent friend. That if you can't think, Krishna will think for you. If you can't think, Krishna will think of you. Right? So Krishna never abandons his devotee. Like Tamal Krishna Maharaj, right? He was driving back.
I did not want to mention this one, but
he was driving back from Mayapur. The driver fell asleep. The car hit the road, the tree,
and also last year that plane crashed while going to Kathmandu. Few devotees from
there were few devotees, and they. So one understanding, of course, is that death is such a mystical process. Who knows when a person dies? Right? Externally, we might think that death is instantaneous, but who knows? How long does the mind think? How long does consciousness remain? Does the person still? Krishna gives the person the ability to think. Regardless of the situation, one should understand that one can never go to Krishna based on their effort. So Krishna's program is by invitation only. right? So the only way you can go to Krishna is when Krishna invites you. Everything else is to make yourself qualified to get the invitation. So if Krishna deems that you are okay to come, then regardless of what you think, regardless of what you do, regardless of anything, Krishna will get you, will get you back. So our focus is more so on in the 7th chapter, in the 8th chapter, there is a lot of discussion about what is the best way to die. Krishna says, right? This time of the year, this time of the day, when the moon is here, this is the best time to die. And he says that's what the yogis try to do. And then he says, but the devotees don't have to worry about it, because I take care of everything for them. Right?
So from this discussion, as an individual, how do I look both of the cases? Just to believe that Krishna will take care of both of them?
I would think so. I mean, that's
so in that perspective, then how do we reconcile that another general person who is not apparently known as a devotee,
right.
If he dies the same way,
Right.
so can he think in the same way?
No, because like I said, this is all what Krishna wants. So it's not the mechanical process of dying and thinking about Krishna that gets you admission into Krishna Loka. It is ultimately Krishna's mercy that gets you admission. All these things are what we do to qualify ourselves for the mercy. Right? So it is nothing to do with the fact that like there is this is one of those Birbal stories, right? You don't know if it's true or not, but it makes a good point that Akbar once asked Birbal about I don't remember the story very well, but I think they were going out for a walk, and Akbar noticed Birbal checking out some girls in the palace, and he said, "You're an old man, you should not be doing all this." And then Birbal said, "But I'm a man, it's my nature." And Akbar says, "When will this stop?" And Birbal says that you come tomorrow to this address and I'll answer your question. So then, but he says, get your daughter along with you. So Akbar gets his daughter, who's very, very pretty, and he goes into the hut, and in the hut there is an old man who is at the verge of death. And Akbar comes in there, and Birbal goes there, and the daughter goes there, and the old man is checking out the daughter, Akbar's daughter. So Birbal says that not even at the time of death does this go away. So Krishna says the whole material world is built on one thing only, and that is lust. Right? So it is something that has caused us to come here in the material world, and it will be there for as long as we stay in the material world. On our own, it's very difficult. It's like when a fly gets caught in the spider web, the more the fly tries, the more it gets entrapped. Only when somebody from outside comes and picks it. That's why we are pushti marg. We are always saying to Krishna, everything that we do is not so that on our own effort we break the bindings. Everything that we do is saying that Krishna, I am sincere about getting out of here. Now you help me. Right?
Thank you.
Thank you. That is a good question, Balaka.
Prabhu, on this context of like when he's telling especially people who like die suddenly or the
Yes,
diseases
yes.
and afterward. Now, this is my realization that even us, like people like us, because of our association, we tend to think of Krishna maybe a little more than the other people. So, like even sometimes we get scared, the first thing comes to our mind is, oh, Krishna,
Right.
So, if we do that, and people who are devotees, who are so exalted, I mean, obviously they may die at a sudden death, maybe an accident or something, but they may have, like in their mind, they might have to call out
You're
Krishna's
right.
name.
You're right. You're right. It's the whole thing is that and the mind moves at the speed of mind. So and everything is much slower. So where does your mind go? Even though from our perspective an accident is almost instantaneous, but for the mind it could be ages and ages. So if at that time the mind could go to a Guru Maharaj, from Guru Maharaj to Krishna, go to the temple deities, it could travel all the places while the accident is happening. Good. Anything else? Okay, so if we can have the nursing day prayers. Does anybody know how to stop this?